Hi everyone, my name is Naisha Miller, and I'm going to be presenting you the Communicating Me. So the main points that I'll be going over is my overarching goal of wanting to be a counselor. Then I'll go over to my behavioral blends, and I'll go over how others see me versus how I really am. I'll go through some communication barriers. Two of them mostly is dealing with conflict and finding my voice. Some resources like conflict resolution, effective listening, and for the levels of listening, and understanding emotional intelligence. The action plan would be admitting ignorance, acknowledging, and the three things you accept about yourself. And then I will close. On my conclusion. So my overarching goal is being a youth counselor for at-risk youth. I grew up in the inner city of Chicago, Illinois, and with that, I have experienced a lot of trauma. I experienced shootings, drive-by shootings, violence. I also was in a school that teachers really wasn't there for us as a whole. Most teachers were there just for a paycheck, and I remember hearing a lot of times teachers telling me that, oh, you won't be nothing in life, or you amount to nothing, or you'll never get something. And growing up, my mother eventually took me and my siblings out of that situation, and we ended up moving to Utah. And that changed a lot of things about me. And as I look back, I really feel like there's a lot of kids, well, there are a lot of kids out there now who are still stuck in that situation. And all they want is help. They're crying for help, and they act out for various reasons. And I want to be that help for those children because I didn't have that when I was there. Moving on to my behavior blends. With my Uniquely You assessment, I identified as an S, as how people see me, and I identified as a CIS, as how I really am. And taking that assessment really opened my eyes, and because it was so to the T of how I am. As an S, people see me more as being more steady and stable. I'm more quiet and reserved, which I really am. I really don't like saying much in a crowd, and really sit back and I like to observe, and I really like listening to other people. As a CIS, people will see me as a combination of both, and overall I feel like I am a good combination of both. The main reason why, as I go back to my S personality, on why I sit back and listen pretty much, is because growing up, my mother has always told us, don't speak to anybody if you weren't spoken to. Don't talk to strangers. We still that into small children's heads. And so as I eventually, when adults are talking or anyone talking and I interrupt them or I say something, I would get in trouble and get in timeout or a spanking or anything like that. And so it was it was pretty bad. But along with going to my mother, I also will go with my environment. I was so on the defense consistently. Everything that somebody said to me, I took offense in. Everything that went on, I felt like that had an impact on me, which it did, looking at the community and the environment I was living in. So my safe zone was pretty much at home with my siblings. So that will explain me being a CIS personally with intimate relationships, because that's how I feel more comfortable with. I feel more comfortable with at home or people that I know, like my husband and my siblings to this day. So that's one of that. As I move on to some communication barriers. Communication barriers that I do have is conflict. Conflict is the interaction of independent people who perceive compatible goals and interference from each other in achieving these goals. So in other words, when two people disagree with a certain subject and we butt heads a lot, and it will create tension and a lot of negative energy. One way that I have coped with avoiding myself is, one way that I have dealt with conflict is I just don't address it at all. I avoid it. I try to stay clear from it. I don't bother with it. If anything, if somebody said they didn't like me or somebody said, oh, I have a problem with you, I really just leave it alone and let it blow over. I really if I see that person, I try to stay away from them, stay at their path, just to avoid any kind of confrontations or anything like that. I do not like confrontations. I try my best to keep away from it because growing up, I I dealt with conflict and so much anger and rage, violence, because that was all around me and that's what everybody else did and that's all I knew how to do. And so I really didn't come out of that. And so because I know how I am and how mad I can get, sometimes over the smallest things, what I have done is I've tried to completely completely just avoid the whole situation at all means. Another thing that I have as a barrier is speaking out. I don't really like to talk about how I'm feeling or what I'm feeling or something I don't disagree with. I would tend to agree just to agree, just feel I can avoid conflict. And that I try, like I said with conflict, I like to make it blow over. I don't really, speak out on a lot of stuff. And that right there can eventually lead to conflict. I really learned that through this class, that having that will lead to conflict. If I don't speak out on what I feel is wrong, then that's when that would come to tension. Like with me and my husband, if we have a disagreement, if I come home and I see that the dishes aren't done, or if I come home and the house is not clean, or if I go to work and there's someone that did or said something I didn't like, if I let that build up, then that creates tension and then that goes to conflict. And then if I avoid the conflict, it doesn't do nothing but make it worse and it starts to blow up and then it gets all bad and it's not a good situation personally or professionally in any way. Some resources that can help me, however, with these barriers is 3 things with conflicts. I would practice conflict resolution strategies. And here I would focus mainly on the confronting and collaborating strategy. That strategy involves information sharing, openness, and clarification of issues to the point or conflict to reach a solution acceptable to both parties. So that means that we would come together and we would pretty much brainstorm or pretty much come together and say, okay, what is it that we can do to fix this problem? And we would figure out what can we do to make it work, and we can move forward from that, and we can both be making a win-win situation and somebody actually feel like they're losing. The second thing, I'll be aware of my levels of listening. There's levels of listening from 1 to 3. Level 1 being, you're listening you're giving that person your undivided attention. They're feeling that they're being heard, or you can all the way to level 3, where you're not listening at all and you have other things on your mind. You're thinking about something else. And so, especially when it comes to conflict, or especially if I'm counseling children and what I aspire to be, then I would need to be working on my levels, being cautious of what level am I listening to this person at? Am I listening to their needs? Am I listening to their problems? Am I listening to what they feel is wrong in the situation during a conflict, or wrong in the situation when it's a problem, when their problems? Third thing I would do is be aware of my own. Being aware of my own as well as the other person's emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is a concept to account for the variability in individuals' ability and propensity to regulate their emotions. So this is how somebody can deal with their emotions and how they can handle it under stress or in conflicts or anything. So one way I need to be aware of my own emotional intelligence in a situation versus the other person's. So if we can determine if we can come together and we can see if we can come with a resolution, if we have the right mentality and if we have the right, that if they up there in their emotional intelligence. If they're a little low and they can't handle situations, then pretty much we're not going to get anything done. Another strategy I can use of speaking up is finding my voice. I need to really learn to speak up. I need to be more assertive. I need to be telling people what is wrong with me. Well, how do I feel? What is it do I need to do? So that's right there. My action plan, there's a few of them that I would like to address is acknowledge, be assertive, admitting ignorance and telling people that, hey, I didn't know about this. Could you educate me? That can help you educate myself. And 3 things to accept about yourself is that I will make mistakes. My intentions are complex, because if I meant something, if I made it come out of a different way, and if I didn't mean it, that's how it's going to come out. And you have to really account for, hey, that I didn't really mean it that way. and that I've contributed to the problem. If there happens to be a problem, then I've contributed to that. So the quote that I want to close with is, be angry and yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. So I need to speak up and not avoid conflict and address the issues, and I do not let it build to the point where I cannot have it come together and we create a solution. Thank you for listening, and once again, my name is Naisha Miller, and have a good day.